Hello and welcome everybody to the Casual Spikes podcast, episode 36, where we are talking about the ban restricted announcement that is going to be taking place on March 31st of 2025. There's a lot of interesting conversations to be had around the main competitive formats of Magic, as we're at probably an all or nothing kind of, Mexican standoff in the standard format with three very powerful cards. The modern format, I think we essentially know the card that is dead to rights at this point. But there's some other interesting conversations we have in the format as we kind of look towards a post-ban world in both of these major formats, and we're going to be getting into that tonight on this episode of the Casual Spikes podcast. Before we go into any of this stuff, please, 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 if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and ring that notification bell so you know when future episodes of the Casual Spikes podcast get posted. And of course, leave a like on the video and comment down below what you think is going to happen in the March 31st, 2025 ban restricted announcement. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, maybe even shout them out on the post-ban kind of reaction episode that we will do on the following week. I do want to take this time real quick, Randy, because someone did listen to you from the video. I think is Hig95 George ended up commenting saying, "Hey, great episode. Here's some interaction for yous." And of course, that the Casual Spikes had to give him a goat because that is one of the first people in quite a while that has actually commented on the videos and stuff. With some other people, of course, but that was the most recent one. So,
Nice.
um, but
I'm
yeah,
glad. I'm glad someone said something.
Yeah, be sure to share this with your friends. Of course, like, comment, all that fun stuff. Subscribe. That's all going to help with the YouTube algorithm to get this out to more people. We do greatly appreciate that. And of course, if you want even more content, because we only post about one episode a week, please go and check out the description down below where you can find my channel and Randy's channel, where we talk all things Magic the Gathering, mainly related to competitive Magic, as well as some other fun stuff going on there as well. I think we've kind of done a pretty good job of kind of breaking things up, making things fun.
Yeah, I think so. I need to get back to doing some more side videos. I've kind of just been focusing on like metagame breakdowns and such. And so like this week will be different because there's no metagame breakdown to do because we're in the middle of or right before a ban announcement. And the RCQ season has just ended for standard, so there's nothing to really talk about like for the meta breakdown there. And there's no reason to talk about the meta breakdown in modern when we all know that the one deck is not going to be making it past this round of bannings.
That is for sure. But I think we said before we actually started the video that we are going to start with the standard format. That it's going to be the
Yeah.
upcoming regional championship format, for I believe it's Minneapolis and Hartford here in the United
Yep.
States. And I think this one is the most interesting one because I think that this is I think at the very least, an interesting conversation to be having because I think you and me agreed that we think this is kind of an all or nothing kind of thing. That like once one domino falls, the others are going to follow. So why don't you kind of explain kind of part of our thought process for the cards we're going to kind of outline in this section here?
Okay, I guess I'll start with probably the card that no one thought was ever going to get banned in standard, and that's probably Up the Beanstalk. That card, like, because when you read Up the Beanstalk, you have to have, five. The spell has to cost 5 mana or more to trigger, and like in standard, you're not usually cheating things in. You're not, evoking Solitude to draw a card. You're playing a 5 mana spell and just happens to draw a card on top of it. Like, oh, that's not good. Like, no one's like, oh, I'm super excited. Yeah, and then we've made a whole bunch of cards that also just cost less mana to cast, but still have 5 mana cost, like Rise Down, or all the Overlords that you are paying way less than 5 mana for, but cost more than 5 mana technically. So you're now drawing cards. So I think Up the Beanstalk is a card that needs to go to kind of hurt the 4-color domain or 4 colors or whatever you call it personally deck that's running around. The problem is though that if you hinder the deck like the mid range grind deck, you also need to hit the super aggressive deck because unironically somehow domain is a good counteract to the hyper aggressive deck because Zur is a hell of a card that makes your 7/7 or makes your 7-drop enchantment into a 7/7 lifelinking creature with hexproof that also makes two more blockers when it attacks for some reason. Thanks, Wizards. So you need to hit Monstrous Rage as well. And if you take out those two decks, then the Esper Bounce decks, Esper Pixie, whatever you're calling them at the time, just then become literally the only deck to play in the format. So we need to also, I think, need to ban This Town Ain't Big Enough so that we're not just having, all right, cool, we banned the two most powerful decks in the format. Now it's just Esper Bounce. So you can play Esper Bounce or you can lose. These are your options. Think them over carefully. So I think it's this like weird Mexican standoff where like we either ban all three of these cards or we just ban nothing.
Yeah, and I think, but I can't remember exactly because I think we were on a Discord call maybe on Friday and just talking about it where I'm like, I think Beans is gonna have to go, and then I'm like, well, kind of the thing keeping the like I would say domain in check would have been like these hyper aggressive aggro decks. It's like, well, it doesn't seem fair that you know the domain decks like basically don't get to exist, and now if you want to play like a domain strategy you're just now more than likely going to get run over and you're not even going to be able to like necessarily keep up on cards whatever. So it's like Monstrous Rage is also probably like the best red card in the format, so that probably has to go. And then it was going to be that, and then I think you or I brought up This Town Ain't Big Enough, and I think the more I've kind of sat and thought about like these three cards, the more I've one talked myself into like, yes, this might actually be the correct thing to do is to ban these three cards. And second, I think in having a much larger standard format where we're used to like at max like 2 years worth of sets, which would usually be like 8 to 10 standard sets. I think now we're up to like 12 to 16, something like that, the biggest standards we've ever
Yeah.
seen. And I think we have to be more comfortable, and with now Foundations being a legal fixture of the format for 5 years, I think that we have to be okay and maybe normalize standard bannings a little bit more to kind of ensure that the metagame is a lot healthier for the fact that we are kind of expanding that card pool where, okay, where there's not a rush to really ban something because we only have 3 to 6 months left of this format and that card's going to rotate anyway. Now that we have to wait 2, 3, 4 years for anything to rotate out, I think we have to be okay with banning certain cards that do kind of deem themselves to be problematic. And I think that's like this is going to be emblematic of that sort of change that we're seeing in the standard format right now.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Where a lot of times, standard bannings were so rare because it had to be something like broken. Like, you had to have Oko, you had to have, cards that were just fundamentally just destroying the format. We're like, all right, well, you're playing this deck or you're going to lose. Like, you can play another deck, but your percentage for winning has now dropped 25% just because you chose not to play the best deck.
Mm.
Enjoy your format. So, and because we don't have, like, obviously that's not the case, right? Like, we've seen multiple different decks win big tournaments throughout standard, like this past standard. Like, Esper, it wasn't taking over, Domain hasn't taken over, Mono Red, Gruul, Boros, whatever aggro version you're playing hasn't taken over. But they are kind of just, the best things to be doing in the format by and large. Like, it's these three, everybody else. And I think Brian Kibler, if you guys haven't seen his video, he did a really good job of talking about how like Monstrous Rage has kind of just like stopped you from blocking in this format. Like, you don't really block against the red deck. You kill their creatures or you just hope they don't have it. That's like the option because every time you block, you just get punished. And I think Doomwake's done a lot of like talking about this because he's been playing a lot of standard where he's like I can't tell you the last time I declared a block against a red deck. He's like, I stream every day, like, 5+ hours standard. He's like, I can't tell you the last time I declared a block against a red deck because it just doesn't matter. It's never paying off in favor for myself. I'm just always getting 2-for-1. Like, or like I'm still taking damage, my creature's still dying, their creature's still living. Nothing changed, I just took like maybe 2 less damage. At that point I might as well just keep my creature because it's gonna be more beneficial in a like racing situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And so I think Monsters Raise is kind of like this card that's probably needed to be banned for a long time, or like you need to do something to break up the mice package, which I don't really know if you want to, because like I think if you break up the mice package, mono red cuts or like the red decks kind of get really weak because like that is just a solid package of cards.
Mm-hmm.
But also like I don't know, there's something that needs to be done with mono red, and I think the Monsters Rage is the big thing to do because it makes blocking a profitable thing again, or at least we're like, okay, well I had to block, they had a kill spell, to get like to make sure their creature didn't die type situation, but I didn't now take 12 damage in the process of declaring a block as well. Like I still like didn't take damage. I got, you know, one or two extra turns now because I was able to block with insert creature. And like as it stands now, you can't block. Like when you're blocking, it's because you also you're holding up a removal spell or something too, to where like, all right, cool. If they don't have it, I'm really happy with this block. If they do have it, well, I have the removal spell anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too, and for people that maybe don't understand, it's like, well, yeah, like essentially overall, Monsters Rage is essentially +3/+1 and trample. And if you look at it that way, and that if that's just all it was, like it would be an annoying pump spell, but I don't think it would be. It really wouldn't be that great. I mean, this is just like a one-time thing. The thing about Monstrous Rage is the fact that it creates that monster roll token as well, permanent +1/+1 and trample. This creature is not only a threat every time it attacks while you're holding Monstrous Rage in hand, it continues to be a threat and continues to be a bigger threat metaphorically and literally after the fact, because now this isn't a creature that like, okay, well, in the next turn I can chump block this. It's like, no, now not only did I get in damage, if you know, punishing a block, now I'm going to punish future blocks for the fact that like this big creature now just has trample permanently unless you have enchantment removal, which generally isn't good against like these super like fast aggro decks unless you're just naturally playing main deck hate for it. But even then, you more than likely just have the creature removal to just deal with the creature. But it just becomes this problem now where it's like, we knew this was a thing, we knew that this could potentially happen. Now it's a reality, and the reality is way worse than what we've imagined, you know, before our opponent cast Monstrous Rage.
Yeah, it's just it's a snowballing effect for sure. And we've now proven that these decks can like go long game too. Like I've watched multiple tournaments where like the red deck didn't really do anything until turn 4, and then just did a chunk of like 12 damage on turn 5 with it, and like won the game. Like they can play like the red decks right now are not like your like stereotypical what you, well, depending on when you started playing Magic, depends on when this is. Like I definitely grew up with like hyper aggressive red decks, but they had no lasting power. Like if you could survive the initial onslaught, you could definitely win. Like I grew up with, you know, um, 3/1 that sacrifice at the end of turn and ball lightning and things like that. Where like if you had the removal spell, you had the ability to like weather the storm, quote unquote. You could just survive, or like, oh, if you had some like incidental life gain, you just make it like, oh, I gained 4 life this game. That's what saved me, you know. As to where like if you cited an obstinate battle off against the red deck, sure, sometimes it looks really good. Most of the time, it looks like you cast a 4 drop on 4 and gained 4 life and went up to 12 and then died the next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, thanks for tapping out. Like I don't have to play around your stuff now. Here's my double striking mouse with trample.
Yeah, true, very
Like,
true.
like it's just it's not it's not, you know, the quote unquote traditional style red decks where like, oh, I gained a couple life here and there. You know, Scavenging Ooze gained me a couple life and bought me some time. I got a good like little chump block early in, so it cut him off some damage. It's like, nope, it's just like I took 12 and had blockers.
And it just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, like I took 12 with blockers against them. Like, oh good, I'm glad this happened. Like I'm glad I'm playing this game.
Oh yeah,
So
and yeah, and the fact of the matter too. I mean, at least for, you know, this town ain't big enough. I think that for a lot of people, if Monstrous Rage or Up the Beanstalk isn't like the best card, then it looks like that the this town ain't big enough is probably like at least top three. I mean, we've seen various different self-bound strategies, whether you're playing Demir, whether you're playing Esper, and just the fact that you just generate so much value with this, and that the best this town ain't big enough isn't the one where, you know, oh, I finally have 5 mana, I can bounce 2 of your things. It's not even the, well, for 2 mana I can pick up my best permanent and, you know, the thing that you tapped out for, or, you know, the best tempo play. It's the, I'm gonna pick up 2 of my things, and then those 2 things are going to kill both of your creatures, kill one of your creatures. It's going to create another token on my side, and I'm going to be able to put counters on my stuff, make them bigger, and just like make this huge tempo play. Like it is such a big tempo swing for like two or three of those modes, and usually like the 5 mana bounce 2 of your things, you're probably dead. If that happens to you, you have probably died. So I think to kind of put a nice little bow on this, All three cards are insanely efficient for what they do. They abuse various different things that we are seeing currently in standard that come with having these massive, like these big, size standards in comparative to previous seasons where like we are seeing broken cards being printed, but they're usually kind of kept in check with I think would be smaller formats. But the fact that we're now massive, we need to kind of normalize these potential bannings as like one-off things to keep things relatively healthy up until we get to rotation.
I would agree. I think standard needs to come back and kind of rotate or notate that like paintings are okay. It's not because we're so big, right? Like standards used to be small enough to where, like I said, unless you had like Oko or some kind of something that was like just degenerately warping the format. Um, like for the longest time, standard didn't see a banning until Mirrodin block originally, and that was because Affinity was just so good, like
Mm-hmm.
out of the gate. Like so, like historically, standard bannings are extremely rare, but we also historically had very small standard sets. We were looking at, maybe 6 sets at the most. Sometimes I think 8. I think we got up to 8 at one point. That was like
Yep.
the wild, like oh my god, we got
Mm-hmm.
8 sets of standard. That's and like now we have like 30.
That
It's not. I
also
know it's not many, but
that also might track into where we kind of had like Kaladesh block and like energy was very good, and we saw things like Rogue
mm,
Refiner and uh, Aetherworks Marvel, and then we saw things like Attune with Aether and um, I don't think Ulamog got banned, but I think Emrakul, the Promised End, ended up getting banned too. Felidar Guardian, all these sort of things where that is where I would see it as problematic. Like, yeah, we have 6 to 8 sets and we're banning, that even that amount of cards that are problematic, but we're doing that in such a small standard format as it is, where it's like now if we ban 2 or 3 cards and we've doubled the size of standard or 1.5 times the size, I'm okay with that sort of thing happening.
yeah, I say we're just so big. We're like a lot of like so, especially because like we've changed the rules of how standard was built out. So like also a lot of people like Out the Beanstalk was clearly not thought of as going to be a super powerhouse card in standard,
Hmm.
and like it's literally holding together one deck. It's literally like the Edinburgh crap literally became a deck because of Up the Beanstalk.
Hmm.
Like there's just like decks that became a thing because of Up the Beanstalk. It's the same way as like a lot of decks are just like will come together and we start building them. You're like, oh, I should just splash green because like 16 of my cards trigger Up the Beanstalk, and it's just better to have that in there than not.
True. It's better to play a
So
slightly worse mana base to play the card that massively pays you off.
yeah, that like just lets you win any kind of like grinding matchup in any way, shape, or form. Like, oh, I drew 30 extra cards this game. My opponent did not have a
Hmm.
chance. Um, but yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I think this is standard as a whole. At least as far as it stands right now, from the current um spoilers from cons or it's Tarkir, not
yeah.
cons. Um, Dragonstorm, right?
Yeah, yeah, Tarkir
Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Dragonstorm.
Okay. From it right now, I don't see anything, in my opinion, that's going to massively shake up the format to where I don't see, insert aggro deck, like aggro red deck, still being one of the top 3 best decks to play, Beans being the top, sorry, Domain being the best deck to play, or, Esper Bounce being the best deck to play. Like, I don't really see any of the cards spoiled so far. Just like, oh man, this is going to create a new archetype that's going to rival what's going on in standard. I see like some cool cards, some stuff that maybe like gets put into some tier 2 decks, maybe some tier 3 decks become tier 2 decks, but like nothing is like I feel like it's gonna be kind of like how Aether Drift was, where nothing's gonna really break out or showcase out of just like, oh yeah, this is now making a new archetype. This is where we're at,
Hmm.
and I don't see any of that happening as it stands so far.
Yeah, and it'll be something that we'll have to keep an eye on as we kind of navigate the potential changes to the format and kind of seeing like, okay, well, what were these 3 decks like potentially holding back from innovation? Where it's like, well, now they don't have to play certain cards to be better in this matchup. Like, what do they get to play now in this wide open format? And hopefully, we'll
Mm,
get some clarity on that post March 31st with some of the early challenges for both formats.
yeah, looking forward to that.
Um,
All right,
I'm done
you want
talking
to
about
still sit with
standard. Standard
yeah, so,
sucks. I'm just kidding. Standard's great.
yeah, standard's actually very fun to play. It's one of the few times I've ever said this in at
On
least the last
camera.
5 years.
True. All right. The thing probably most people came for, because it's arguably one of the most popular 60 card constructed formats in Magic, is of course Modern. And we finished up the regional championship season. We had a spotlight series in Utrecht that featured the Modern format, and I've actually gotten to brush up quite a bit on that and everything. It was kind of sweet. And you know, kind of the question that I had asked, kind of like my audience and myself, was like, okay, is this going to be energy versus breach? Like, who's going to come out on top of this? Where like energy is the deck that going into this really without any other major tournaments happening, since we had the unbannings, it's like, okay, like what is going to kind of break out, right? And turns out I was completely wrong because I thought Energy and Breach would kind of be these decks that would battle back and forth, and uh, that didn't happen. That did not happen really at all.
Oh, God no. Breach had a slow start for some reason, and then by the time we got to the U.S. U.S. RCs, we had both of the U.S. RCs top 32 were half of it was Breach,
I mean,
with the last RC being basically what five or six decks were Breach in the top eight.
6.
Six, like
Yeah.
just we had Breach essentially just in the point where it was dominating. Everyone knew going into both those RCs that Breach was a deck to beat. So like that's the problem too. Is like everyone knew this deck. It wasn't like, whoa, Breach came out of nowhere. It's actually really good. I should play more hate cards. It's like, whoa, 15 sideboard cards are dedicated to that matchup. And I'm still losing. Yay.
And I've parroted at least like these stats in different videos, even on the podcast too. Between both United States regional championships, it was the most played deck on day one, day two for both meta games. It was technically tied in Portland, but ended up having the best conversion rates really between all the decks in the formats, like
Mhm.
between all of the decks registered for those events. It had the most decks in both top eights, being 3 in Portland and like 6 in Charlotte.
Oh,
It was a runner up at Portland. It was a winner in Charlotte, and it was one game away from beating Titan and kind of help reestablish Titan on the map basically by it kind of dominating that tournament against Breach. But it just had so many players. Made the world championship because of it. 3 of the 4 players that qualify for the world championship through the regional championship circuit were on Breach. 16 of the 32 from the previous regional championship in Charlotte qualify for the Pro Tour. Many more from Portland qualify for the Pro Tour. So it was just overall a very dominant deck. Any way you slice it, any part of the world, it was just absolutely amazing.
of the 64 people that could qualify for the Pro Tour between the two RCs, it was 32 of them that qualified for it were on Breach. It was
Yeah,
16 and 16 for both. It's literally an unreal amount.
yeah, just
Like
pure
you
dominance.
you were either playing Breach or you were playing a tier 2 deck, and everyone knew it. A lot of people just can't afford to drop the $1,600 it is to build that deck. Now, obviously, if you've been playing Modern, you have a lot of like the cheaper cards for that, or like the lands and stuff like that. But like people just couldn't afford to go buy $800 worth of boxes. Like I know I couldn't. Like if I had access to boxes, I would have been on Breach. Like just
Mm-hmm.
would not have mattered. I would play the best deck. I didn't have $800 to drop on boxes, so we didn't play Breach.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's just by and large the best deck in the format. So clearly, on Monday, the 31st of March, we know that Grinding Station is going to get the ban, as it should,
You
because
troll.
Wizards will fuck this up somehow still.
No, of course we know that it's either Underworld Breach or Mox Opal. That's kind of been the discourse like in the community and stuff. It's like, well, Mox Opal, like the deck was like fine, and then Mox Opal came out and it really pushed the deck even farther. You know, it went from being like the third or fourth best deck. Some people already had it as the best deck. Mox Opal just pushed it a little bit higher. And for me personally, and I think the correct opinion is that like Underworld Breach is already just a messed up card anyway. It's probably one of the most busted designs of a Magic card in a very it's so unique in what it does because you know even like the comparisons that we have for it don't even allow you to necessarily play the same card over and over and over and over again like this does. So for me personally, I think Randy shares the same like sentiment here. I think Underworld Breach is a card that has to go, and we can leave Mox Opal in the format. And if you really want Wizards to like keep an eye on it from that point, that's fine. But Mox Opal, this is like the only Mox Opal deck that was like dominant,
Play, playable.
playable,
Like,
dominant, like
like
whatever superlative you want to use.
yeah, it's just so realistically, I don't think like as soon as like Writing Station or Underworld Breach gets banned, like as soon as that deck gets banned, the Mox Opal, like the next best thing is doing is just an Affinity doing its Affinity things. Like there's no broken deck taking advantage of it. There's nothing doing anything with it. So obviously, I see like the obvious sentiment is like it's fast mana. Fast mana is bad. Yada yada yada. I think you can make that argument, but Mox Opal does kind of have a restrictive cost of needing 3 artifacts. And if, when you want to put in like low drop artifacts into your deck, almost all of them are bad. Like the best, like the two best low drop artifacts are Mox Amber to go with it and Mistress Bauble. But like even still, like those aren't like Mox Amber is a pain in the ass to turn on. Like
Mm.
we finally got two good creatures worth playing that are legendary early on to like make Mox Opal good or Mox Amber good. And that's still questionable if I would want to play Mox Amber and not a just like dedicated combo breach style deck where like I 100% would need this extra mana to like just win as quickly as possible. So I just don't think Mox Opal does anything in the like. I think it gets played in like the affinity decks, right? Like I think that's good. I think it's where you want to be at, right? Like I don't think it's a bad thing,
Mm.
but like I don't think it breaks the format. I think it gets tried out in a lot of Asmo food decks that they learn is not good still. Because everyone tries to make that deck playable, myself included. I've tried too many Asmo shells to go, this is going to work this time. Did not work this time, spoilers. But I don't think Mox Opal does anything outside of, like what it's going to just normally do. It's going to make a couple decks better, quote unquote, but it's not going to make anything broken. It's not going to destroy the format. It's not going to do anything. I also think that if Wizards rebans Mox Opal, they lose all trust in their people because people have now spent, you know, $800+ on getting a hold of Mox Opal, things like that. And I think that if you want to go ahead and reban it, you can 100%. That's what Wizards doesn't technically need to care about the secondary market. They 100% do, despite them saying they don't acknowledge it at all for legal reasons. But like they definitely know it. Otherwise, they would reprint anything they wanted at any time they wanted because it wouldn't matter.
Mm.
But I think if you ban Mox Opal, you lose a lot of faith in your consumers to like ever listen to what you're going to do again because that card immediately tanks back down to like $80, $50 again.
It only tanks to like 50 to $60.
Yeah, but it's a $200 card. Like you,
Yeah,
if your stock went from $200 to $50, that would be a bad day.
or $500 to $250.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it does go pretty deep. Well, maybe not necessarily pretty deep, but like in the thought of, hey, we unbanned these 4 cards. Like, how bad of a look would it be if Mox Opal is even if you think
Very
like
cruel.
Breach, even if you think Breach ends up being like the scapegoat for like Mox Opal to survive another 3, 6 a year in the modern format, like it would be really bad. I think going forward, if we're like, yeah, like okay, well we'll leave Breach legal in the format, and we'll take away Mox Opal, and it's like, well, we just got this card back. Like you just unbanned it. You basically like defended how okay it would be to have it, and really without Breach, the card is less playable than Green Sun Zenith, which I don't know, that I guess that maybe would be an argument, and around the playability of like Faithless Looting or whatever, and I think at that point, if you're like, well, we're just going to reban this card, then I think that you take away, the potential year or two of us seeing unbans in the format when the format is relatively healthy. So I would rather push for more unbannings rather than like, okay, well, we went 3 for 4 into us. That's still like not good. We have to be perfect. We're not going to do this for a while.
Yeah. No, I think I don't know. I think the biggest look is I don't think Wizards really thought too much about Grinding Station because like that deck was just missing Mox Opal, but like it was already playable before Mox Opal. It wasn't like Mox Opal turned it from a tier 5 to tier 1. It just turned it from tier 2 to tier 0, basically.
Mm,
Um, that being said, though, I think it was a mistake not to ban Underworld Breach when they unbanned Mox Opal because a lot of people immediately were talking about that like day one of unbannings are like, oh yeah, Underworld Breach just gets better, right? Like it doesn't
mm.
have to have a creature in play now, so like it's not as fragile. It's like, yeah, it turns out better just means broken.
Yeah, in this
But
case, yes.
but yeah, I mean I don't know. Like looking at the format, I don't think the format's bad. Um like moving forward, if we once we ban Breach, I think it's semi healthy. I don't think there's really anything else that needs 100% banned. I would like to see Amulet of Vigor banned in Titan because I think Titan is becoming, excuse me, is slowly becoming a tier 0 deck with its new like the new combos it's running and things like that. I've
Mm.
literally lost to someone who had like one land in play, and they like it was just degenerate BS they can do. And I think that deck needs to have a peg taken out of it to at least put it back down to like even keeling.
Hey, I got triple tightened on stream on turn 2. Like, and they didn't win the game, but I certainly wasn't winning the game.
Yeah, turns out them having still having like 8 mana on turn going into their turn 3 and 3 Titans still attacking is kind of hard to beat because
True.
I'm not comboing off on my turn 3 to win. I'm playing a land, playing a creature, and hoping that's good enough, and it turns out it was not.
True. Yogg. I mean, in theory, Yogg can do like infinite life, and I guess say like, all right, Titan player, figure it out. But you know, yeah, I don't know. I am not going to be a Titan apologist. I think it definitely does some pretty degenerate things. And I think if you're gonna have we could see Amulet banned if there's like some other kind of like maybe Spelunking type card, or maybe even just Spelunking in the deck. Just 3 mana, like you can technically ramp off this, but you're not going to be able to do like the 6 mana off of one land drop sort of deal.
Yeah, that's kind of why I want to see Amulet banned and see where Titan stands after that. Personally, I know you had some cards you think are going to be on the lookout now of like going forward in the metagame after some spoilers we've seen and what's going to shake out, you think?
Yeah, so kind of like the previous ban and restricted announcements. Like I didn't think in the last ban and restricted announcement we had in December that we would get cards unbanned, but I thought that we'd be heavily focused on the energy deck and just overall trying to power down the level of modern, and then have some kind of cards like on a watch list. And so this is like my personal like watch list of cards that I don't think are going to get banned this time around, but I could see the potential for them to be very powerful kind of going forward and just kind of being like these go-to strategies. So we know that Boros Energy, while started seeing less and less play in these regional championships, was still a very good deck. It still put like one copy into the top 8 of both regional championships, which I don't even think the other deck that we're going to talk about, the red green like Eldrazi deck, didn't necessarily do that in the United States. Even though it did put 2, I think, in the Portland regional championship. But I think that if we just have Breach ban and maybe 1 or 2 unbannings potentially, that I don't think we see any further bans, but these are cards that coming up in the next 3 to 6 months, depending on their level of how problematic they are, that they could end up there. So, really quickly, I think for the Eldrazi side of things, I think like sowing Mycospawn and like Kozilek's Command are probably the cards that are not the very best cards, but I think they give you the most value. Mycospawn being ramp plus being able to Stone Rain your opponent on like a later turn, and with another card that I think is very likely to get banned from that deck. The fact that you're able to ramp on turn 2 and then Stone Rain on turn 3, or just Stone Rain on turn 3 plus ramping is like that's degenerate behavior. And then Kozilek's Command, people have found the secret mode of just cycling it for 2 mana, and everyone's like, well, this is absolutely amazing that you can just cycle this card, get into your graveyard, abuse some of the other graveyard things that you can do in the deck, namely the giant Emrakul the Promised End that you can cast in like turn 4 or turn 5, a lot of the time. Also, just being like a very efficient and effective like hate piece removal spell, and in some cases you can just abuse the fact that it's a colorless spell. Whatever the case may be, I think it's just a very powerful like toolbox, like tool type card that just answers a lot of relevant things all at the same time. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is on a watch list. Um, but I think the biggest problem is Ugin's Labyrinth. Virtually unconditional, like 2 colorless mana that sets up like playing a 2 mana ramp card on turn 1 into playing Myco Spawn, or having a decent size like Kozilek's Command that you can then ramp into a Emrakul the Promised End on like turn 3. I think that this card here, I think if Ugin's Labyrinth is gone, maybe these other cards are okay, because there's a lot more work that you have to put in with the Eldrazi deck to then try to get to like a turn 3 Myco Spawn. I think it's very likely with Eldrazi Temple, but all these cards I think get a lot worse when you don't have this like uh, non-specific like 2 colorless mana. You can spend it on whatever you want, and then being able to like ramp and punish your opponents that way. Do you want me to talk about the energy stuff then real quick? Just kind of throw that out, or
Yeah, because I mean, you have what a Johnny or a guide kind of needs to be hit.
yeah, and I think that we brought up Ajani or Guide of Souls in the previous like ban prediction video that we did. Guide of Souls, I think by far is like one of your best tools as like an aggro card, right? Like the fact that if it was just a regular like what we call Soul Sisters, like these white creatures that end up like gaining you a life whenever a creature enters the battlefield, whether it's your own creature or it's your opponent's, whatever the case may be. The fact that Guide of Souls will just gain you a life and give you energy, and then it also feeds into its own ability of just like, now I'm going to be able to attack my creatures and just be able to pump them up, give them flying, so they're going to be evasive threats. Being an angel, who really cares? But this in conjunction with the card like Ocelot Pride, and I think I really like Ocelot Pride as a card because it's just being a 1 toughness thing in a format that still has like Orcish Bowmaster, in a format that ideally slows down a little bit. Maybe we see things like Ren and Six kind of show up, and some of these other like deal 1 or 2 damage like spells in the format. That I think Ocelot Pride, being a creature that has to attack, survive combat, and then also has to get to the end step as well, is like a card that's fine. I just think it's less okay when you have Guide of Souls, where it's like I can just build up a board, I just play out my creatures, and then I gain life. All right, I'm gonna make a cat token. I have the City's Blessing. I'm gonna make another cat token, and really pay you off for these token synergies. I think that they should have access to a worse Guide of Souls, Soul Sister type card, and not have access to Guide of Souls. And then a Johnny, part of the same reason is the fact that you have Goblin Bombardment and all these other synergies where you just make cats, you can kill your own cats to then flip a Johnny, and then you just have this giant like lightning bolt, or not even lightning bolt, it's fireball, hit your opponent's face, or pump up the jams with your little kittens and everything like that. I think it's just a very good value card. It's a very powerful card, and I wouldn't necessarily want both of them to go, but I kind of lean more towards Guided Souls than a Johnny, because I'm fine with Boros Energy occasionally having some very fast kills, like in that way, but I'm not okay with them just being able to play this game where I'm going to sit back, I'm going to play out creatures, I'm going to gain some life, I'm going to disincentivize you from attacking, I'm going to make a board full of cats, and then eventually finish you off with Goblin Bombardment, or just like getting in and being able to pump up my creatures, through the air constantly.
Yeah, I think I'm more okay with Guide of Souls than I am with a Johnny. Because I think that you're only disincentivized to attack because of the Johnny right now. Because like they start making up these cat tokens, and it's like, well, I can't attack in because there's like, cool, 1/1 cat, go in and do your thing, block, please die, just die. Trigger, flip a Johnny. I'm gonna start doming you for 12. A good.
Yep,
Like
yep.
I think a Johnny is I think a Johnny is much more the culprit for why Boros energy is so good because of its ability just to dome people out of nowhere, and it's just so hard for a lot of decks to interact with planeswalkers while also trying to fight the creature standpoint of it. So I
hmm
think that like I would like to see a Johnny go more than Guided Souls. I also think that Guided Souls, if we could nerf Guided Souls to just being whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield, gain one life, gain one energy, 1/2, fine. That card would be perfectly fine. The fact that they gave it a energy sink on top of it is like the problem with Guided Souls.
Or even if it just gave you an energy when a creature entered the battlefield, it's like the life gain on it also just kind of makes racing situations very awkward when you pair it with something like Guide of Souls, or not Guide of Souls, when you pair it with
Oh, awesome.
Ocelot Pride to again just
Yeah,
make a board full of things, get more life and more energy, and it's like I can't break through this board and I can't be aggressive because then they're attacking me and hitting me for 8-10 damage in the air, and if I attack, they just chump block. It's
yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with it, and that's why I kind of wish Guide of Souls over Johnny. But
Each their own. I think one of those two cards is going to end up having to
to each their own.
go. I also think that was it Felia, the shepherd, the dog,
Mm,
the 2 mana dog. I
the
think
goodest girl.
the bestest boy,
Is it a boy?
Mike. Everyone calls it the bestest boy. I don't know, or they
Oh,
call it the bestest dog.
I hope it's a
So
female, so we just assumed a dog's gender. Cancelled.
let's go. It means I'm popular enough to be canceled. Uh, so I think that's a card that could possibly get banned. I think that we are very early on in the Orzhov mid range development of that deck, but I think that is a card I could see easily getting banned. Only for the sense of like that card does a lot of heavy lifting in that deck, where it lets you draw cards with Ketchermos, it lets you blink your Overlord to get it activated. So you go end of your opponent's turn 2, flash in the dog, play Overlord, attack with the dog, blink the Overlord, and like you just get so much value from it. And I think the fact that it has Slash 2 makes it a little harder to play around.
Mm-hmm.
Or like one of those things where like I had to hold up mana, and if they don't have it, they just don't, like I've wasted my turn now too. So like I don't know if it needs to be banned. I don't think it's something that's gonna get banned on the banning by any means, but I think it's something that is on the radar to be watched. In my opinion, I think it's something that should be kind of like we should keep track of this and see how it goes. It's not necessarily something that needs to happen. We don't need to ban it, but we should kind of keep an eye out for how Orzhov is doing and if it's just like leaps and miles ahead of where it needs to be. Because I think Thalia is a good banning in that deck where it slows it down. It doesn't like destroy the deck, or anything like that, but it kind of like speed bumps it. It makes it a little bit slower, a little bit more manageable. You're not able to have 8 cards that blink your Overlord on turn 3. Essentially, you
I,
only have 4 now.
I don't even think because like Ephemerate is only like a creature, right? Like, so you don't even get a chance
Um,
to blink the
Flicker
Overlord.
Wisp,
What is it?
Flicker Wisp.
Oh, Flicker West. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm counting four Flicker Wisps, 4 dogs,
I
which they
forget
don't
that
usually play.
I forget that Flicker Wisp is now a playable Magic card because of MDFC's
Yeah,
Ketchermos and Overlords and shit. I
yeah,
forget
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Flicker Wisp went from being like super playable to Magic got better to Flicker Wisp is there. The Flicker Wisp is now back on top in 2025. It's just like, yeah, that's wild.
We are so
It's
back.
wild. But then we kind of have a couple unbannings too, right? Because I don't think there's anything else you have that you want to talk about, like on the watch list type thing.
No, definitely in our ban or unbanned cards do differ pretty. I would say pretty heavily.
Uh, Maybe. I said
Or
you want me to go with mine or you want yours
you
first?
let me go on a tangent, so I'll let you kick us off.
So my first one's not like a real choice in the sense of like I think Bruce from Below can get unbanned.
And
I
you're
also
done.
think that if it I also think that if it doesn't get unbanned, nothing changes. Like it gets unbanned, nothing changes. Gets Saves banned, nothing changes. Like the card doesn't do anything. Like if it gets unbanned, woo. If it doesn't get unbanned, woo. Like no one's calling for it. I just think it's a card that like died for Hogak's sins essentially and didn't need to be banned. Like it was definitely a case of Wizards like, no man, we'll fix the problem. Okay, so you're gonna ban Hogak. Yeah, Blitz from below gone. We fixed that problem for you guys. You made the deck better. No, we did, huh?
Because I think players also at that time realized like we don't need to have like the combo aspect of it. Because I mean, I played at least the legacy version of Hogak a lot, and that was so much fun. That's a dopamine rush to just like make 40 zombies and then mill your opponent. Oh, so good. But I don't think they expected people to then just like, oh, well, we still have all these other busted cards, so like, let's just play a turbo Hogak strategy where we can also get back Vengevine.
Yeah, just infinitely worse. So I think that Bridge can come back, but I'm not like actually advocating for it. I'm just saying that I think realistically, if Wizards unban this to even tomorrow, nothing changes in Modern. No one's gonna do anything crazy. Um, I have another one that I think also died for the sins of the other cards, Mystic Sanctuary. Um, I think that can come back just because I think it died for Uro sins and what Field of the Dead sins, where it was just like that horrendous modern time period where it was kind of like in between COVID, where Magic just wasn't paid attention to as much because no one's playing competitively. It's only online, just kind of horrendous style. And they banned like 3 cards all at once, where really they should have banned like Field of the Dead like a year and a half ago. Earl should have been banned probably like 2 years ago. And Mystic Sanctuary, Mystic Sanctuary should have just stayed unbanned. Because you can't, there's no good ways to do like cryptic loops, which is what people were doing with it
Mm.
without Uro. So like I think that you could unban that card. I don't think it's remotely too powerful. As a whole, I think it'd be interesting to have back in the format. Um, if they don't unban it, that's fine too. Like I'm not like a giant stand for it. I just think it'd be interesting to see it unbanned without Uro being able to also like help trigger the BS with it.
Could you imagine a world where we like play stock up and then we're able to Mystic Sanctuary a stock up back on top of our library?
I think that if Modern gets that slow, we're in a really healthy format.
I don't know about really healthy because I'm definitely on the side of like I'm gonna cast stock up like 15 times this game, and I'm gonna win just purely on the selection. I'm
Jesus.
just saying.
So speaking of stock up, I think Ponder could get unbanned. So I said this a lot when we had faithless looting legal in the format. I said if Red can have faithless looting, Blue deserves to have Ponder. And I think Red got his faithless looting back. I want my Ponder back.
Yeah,
I also don't think it breaks anything. The storm decks now are literally like mono red, so like it's because that used to be the biggest argument. Like, well, no man, if we get Ponder back, then blue red storm somehow becomes the best deck in the format. I'm like, I don't think you know how that deck works. The cantrip is not what's stopping that deck from being good. It's all the other good decks around it that was stopping it from being good.
yeah. I don't
And
know if they stop splashing white to play blue for a cantrip.
yeah, they 100% don't. Their white sideboard cards are just infinitely better and stop them from
True.
not losing.
True.
um, so I think
Based.
Ponder could realistically come back. I don't think it's going to do any damage. I think it makes some decks like slightly better. I think maybe Belcher gets better because I think Belcher would play it.
Yeah, because we needed Belcher to be better.
Belcher's already trash, dude. It's we're, we're playing so much land destruction right now in modern that Belcher can't keep up. Okay, Belcher needs to cast a 4 mana spell and activate it on the same turn. That's 7 mana.
And I feel 0% bad for any of them.
Horrendous. Anyway, and then I think Violent Outburst can come back.
No.
Yeah. Yes. I think Violent Outburst can come back because I think it legitimately got banned before it should have. I think it got banned, and then literally the format got faster, and Rhinos would have been worse already. I think that like as it stands right now, you could unban Violent Outbursts and it doesn't break the format by any means. I don't think Rhinos is breaking the format to begin with, especially once like Violent Outbursts got banned and then MH3 came out. We should have waited until MH3 came out to see how the format would have reacted. I'm a big advocate of that. Is that we should have waited to see how the format would have reacted before we banned it.
Shoot, I think that they should have banned like Nadu before we had MH3, and they were like, "Well, we're not going to. We'll just see how it goes." And
Yeah, fucking horrendous. But those are like the cards I think that could easily come off the ban list and not destroy the meta, basically.
all right, that's fair. That's fair. I see where you're coming from. Violent Outburst is the only
Also,
one I'll give you a real fight on, but aside from that,
also, quick PSA: the Punishing Fire cannot get unbanned. Neither can Jite. Please stop asking.
I did have someone in the comments of my video say like, well, why not Punishing Fire? Because that would be a good way to like deter Boros energy or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know if Punishing Fire loop would be too slow or whatever, like in this day and age with how fast the format is. But it just doesn't sound like anything that's like that fun to bring back. It's like, oh goody, I get my slow win condition back. That's probably too slow, but then I also just get to nullify every small aggro strategy. Great.
Yeah, it's really funny watching people like, yo, I'm so glad we banned Fury. Now we can have small creature decks back again. Let's unban Punishing Fire. Sure, man. That's the thing you just advocated not having in the format. Let's bring back another version of it.
Yeah, if you want Punishing Fire, play
Genius.
Yawgmoth. It feels like the same thing.
Yeah. You still give your opponent life, you just lose life.
Yeah, or you just go like infinite with all the other dumb shit in it. It's so good. I love Yawgmoth. Don't touch it.
Moving on from that statement. No one's touching it. It's a tier 3 deck.
Tier 3 deck, boy. Alright. So as long as I have like my little notes put up here. So I have, and I'll start from the like probably the least controversial ones. So I think Dig Through Time is probably a card that can come back. I think there's more stuff going on in the graveyard that's just a lot better to do with it than just I'm gonna look at 7 cards, put 2 in my hand. If you want to argue that like the control decks get something, fine. Like blue white control, like the blue control decks are kind of teeter on like I would say viability or like relevancy. So I mean like if Dig Through Time is like a card that makes them just a little bit better, sure, fine. If you want to talk about like potential combo decks playing Dig Through Time, I think the fastest one is going to be yeeted out of the format. So I'm kind of fine with. I think I've talked myself into Dig Through Time all the way around. Like it's just a card that is good, but I think in the context of the format and what other people are doing with their graveyards, I don't think it's like better than what's already happening now. So I'm kind of fine with that personally.
I think it would be interesting on if Demir Murktide would play that card.
Yeah, I think at that point you're probably maybe you're deciding between like what's it
What
like
are you saying? Murktide or Dixer Time, basically.
yeah.
I think that would be a very interesting conversation because like of all the blue decks that are around right now, like realistically, I think Demir is the only deck that can play that card. Like it's still double blue, which is like you can't unban like
Treasure Cruise
Treasure Cruise because it's one blue. It's very splashable, especially in a format that has 82 fetch lands and all the shock blades and dual lands, and
and
you can cover
Malevolent
one in.
Rumble. Everyone's
Yeah,
playing Malevolent Rumble.
yeah, like you could literally just play blue green and like have infinite draw. But like, so I do think that's a little interesting. Because it's still a blue, like Demir Murktide is probably the only deck that can really play it, or like the Jeskai slash blue white control deck that pretends to put up numbers every now and then. So it'd be interesting. I it legitimately might be okay to unban. That's interesting.
Yeah, see, so they're not all bad. Glimpse of Nature is a card that I've talked about before. Like I thought it would get unbanned before Grain Sun Zenith got unbanned. I
Yeah.
figured, whatever, like getting Dryad Arbor like on turn one wasn't the broken thing. It was going to be the potential like green combo decks, like with Titan, essentially just being able to have like another way to tutor their thing, and it's not like an inherent drawback. I would say like at least Summoner, like we can pretend at least Summoner's Pact is like a card where like there's some cases where like the Titan player shoots himself in the foot, and it's like, oh, I don't have double green and two to pay on my next upkeep. I'm dead. That sort of thing. But I think Glimpse of Nature just, this is like a way that we can incentivize some small creature decks. I'm sure that there's going to be somebody out there that somehow breaks this with zero cost creatures and, whatever. But I think with the lack of like fast mana, like if we had Simian Spirit Guide, then sure, maybe Glimpse can't happen. But I think with the lack of fast mana in that way, I think that you can at least make an argument that like Glimpse of Nature would be just a very good value card for a lot of creature decks rather than this being a piece to like a combo deck that we've kind of seen historically in like fringe decks in Legacy, and we see it more how it's used in like Elves in Legacy as being like a play this, like I'm gonna try to draw as many cards as I can, and then hopefully like on the next turn cast another glimpse, and then get to do the same thing, build out a board, and then kill you.
Yeah, I say like without like also Legacy has
Gaia's Cradle.
Guy's Credo. Like we don't have anything close to that.
No, not
Like we
unless
like
you're willing to
we
put in the
kind of
work.
do, but like they're infinitely worse, and like it's a lot harder. Like guys, like because like the the like with when I was playing Legacy Elves, the first guy's cradle wasn't the breaking; it was the second guy's cradle because like you start off your turn with a guy's cradle already in play. It's like all right, cool. Play a couple elves, tap for like 5 mana or something stupid. Play glimpse, play a couple more spells, draw, tap a bunch of elves, draw a couple more cards. It's like all right, cool. Second guy's cradle, I'll tap for 14.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna win now. Like I've now tapped for four. Like I've tapped for this ridiculous amount of mana. There's just nothing we have like that in modern Pioneer standard. So I think even if like you're afraid, like oh, Glimpse puts elves on the map. One, cool. That goes from a tier 12 deck to a tier 3 deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. It becomes playable and not laughable. Um, so I think that would be a decent for the format. I also just I don't think there's anything you can do broken with it because we don't have fast mana, like you said. And if you're going to play like a deck of a bunch of zeros, you're now surrounding your deck as a bunch of like just shitty cards. So like
Mm-hmm.
your average card quality just goes down so much that like if they just like, oh, I ran into the one blue player who has the counter spell, so it doesn't matter, I lost. Or like, oh, I ran into somebody who like, killed something or did something that's minorly important against me. Well, I lost because I can't do my thing now because all my other cards are trash. Like, so I think that because of like the card quality you would need around it to like and this is theoretically doing something broken, it's just not good enough then
Yeah,
to be broken.
and even thinking about it now, like the affinity type strategies, like would probably be like the best. Like we're playing free things, but we're not necessarily comboing. That's like I can play like a bunch of affinity creatures out. Like I basically have a 1 mana like draw three, and I think that's annoying, but maybe isn't necessarily game breaking again for a deck that's not necessarily tier one or tier two, but like occasionally puts up a result. It's like maybe it's a card that they consider as well.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a fine out of band. I'm really enjoying that Dick the Time actually doesn't sound as crazy as I thought it was going to.
Um, Second to last, this is where it probably gets more controversial. I think the artifact lands, I would kind of be okay with it for the fact that, like, sure, Mox Opal exists, so like, there's a greater chance that like Mox Opal is going to be able to help you to add like 2 mana on turn one. Um, but I think as long as we don't have these combo decks out here, or at least like Breach combo, I'm willing to give like the artifact lands like a roll, essentially for these like artifact based decks that are already kind of like doing the thing. Let's see if it works out as good as they think it will.
Which I do have worrisome about. Um, Maybe not even Affinity being too good, but I think just the combination of uh, I think scales might be become too powerful. Just having more ways to eat more things, get more counters too. Like
Hmm.
they can literally now play all artifact, like an all artifact deck, I think, at that point,
Yeah.
or damn near close to it. So I do have some reserves about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, my 32 copies of Stony Silence that they've put in 1,000 different sets now become worth more than a nickel. So maybe that helps out.
Potentially.
But outside, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a bad choice, but I could be wrong. It could just like not actually matter.
Yeah, not necessarily a home willing to die on, but I've kind of advocated for these like the last few times. Mox Opal makes it a little bit murkier, I would think, but
Yeah, I was just saying the problem is that you definitely advocated for these before, but Mox Opal wasn't a card.
yeah.
It's like it was really easy to advocate for these when Mox Opal wasn't legal. Because you're like, oh yeah, we should definitely unban these. Mox Opal's not legal. That's fine. It's like Mox Opal became legal. God damn it.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more suspect, but as it stands, sure, I'll stand on business as it were. Lastly, and I know we're not gonna agree on this card like at all, and I think that it's definitely of these four cards, it's easily gonna be the most powerful one, especially now with some of the synergies we have in the format.
I guess it.
Do you remember what I said?
I don't remember what you said, but I assume it's Deathrite Shaman.
It is 100% Deathrite Shaman. So I already know going into this, all right, that it's
Degenerate.
like worst case scenario, it's probably the best mana dork in the format. Not probably, it is the best mana dork in the format.
100% is. 1 second.
No, no, God, finally,
Okay.
I could see you.
Yeah, it was getting a little dark in here. I was like, I need to turn this light on
Um,
that I forgot to turn on.
but so already like Ketchermo stuff, best mana dork in the format. I 100% agree with all that stuff that it is going to be, and that's why I have it like last, as it is probably like a card that I would like to see unbanned. Probably won't get unbanned, but I think it's a kind of a fun card to speculate on. I kind of want to try it out. I want to give it the try it out deal that Gogori Grave Troll got, because like to me at least in reality, well, yeah, I know comparing it to Grave Troll, but like to me the reality of it being that at least I don't know. I like him. Look at him. He's so cute.
So my counter argument is that he is literally a 1 mana planeswalker.
I know, but like how fun would that be?
So my whole problem is like I don't know. Like there's been a growing sentiment for people wanting to unban Deathrite Shaman, and I think a lot of it is people who've never played with the card or played with it in Pioneer, where it's absolutely trash. Like the card has been legal in Pioneer since its inception,
Mm-hmm.
and has only seen less play through time. Like it's not gone up at all.
Yeah.
It's just bad. Um, the fact of the matter is like it is the best. It is always going to be the best mana ramp spell. But the fact that it's also a win condition by itself too. It's always graveyard hate. It's always a win condition. It's just it does everything you ever want it to do for a 1 drop, and for some ungodly dumb reason, it's a 1/2.
Why does it have to have two toughness at one mana? Why?
Yeah, like that card has done so much work for no reason. Like I am old enough to remember that uh Deathrite Shaman quite literally killed the Goblins deck in Legacy because it was a 1/2, and
You're
every deck played it. I think the other biggest problem I have, like, so I mean, I have a lot of things I can say about why Deathrite Shaman shouldn't get unbanned, but I think the biggest problem is people don't realize that like every deck's just gonna play it, and like that's what people don't, I think, realize. Because like, well, yeah, man, it goes in like the green black strategies, it goes in like the rock strategy. Give them a chance. Like, okay, cool. You know where I'm also gonna put it in? I'm gonna put it in my Demir Murktide deck. It's gonna be a 4 of. I will cut counter spells before I cut that card from my
mm,
deck if it's legal. It's also gonna go in every deck that plays green and or black. And guess what? All of them can do that because we're in modern with fetch lands and shock lands and perfect mana. Like, I don't know. Like, people don't realize how good it is. And so, like, I get why people want it unbanned. And I get how you're like, well, let's look at what's going on in modern right now. Like, look at these powerful things that are going on. I just want a 1-2 that will fundamentally like warp decks to play it. Like that's the whole reason why it got banned. I think that's what people don't remember is like it started off as like Jun got a cool 1-drop into everybody got a cool 1-drop.
So you're saying you're
I
not
would
for the
argue
people?
no, I'm not because I'd argumentally probably play this in my Eldrazi deck too.
You're
I
crazy.
would just be I'd just be green black Eldrazi.
You monster. Whatever. I just want to say controversial things and not have any recourse for anything that I say. Nerd.
Just become a Republican.
That's honestly really
Most
great.
people don't understand.
De- Deathright's a great guy. Very
Yeah.
smart. Probably one of the most intelligent I've ever seen.
Yeah. Um,
All right, whatever.
no,
I'm
I
done.
mean,
Deathrite Shaman, I understand and I do agree. It's probably one of the most powerful cards on the ban list right now. But
um,
it's kind of like
yeah.
licking the Switch cartridge, like when people found out, like, oh yeah, there's like a type of coating they put on it, so it disincentivizes people to like put it in their mouth because that's what they had with like the DS carts. That's what I want to do with this. Like, I want to put the Switch cart in my mouth. I just want to see. All right, is it true?
So Death Ray Shaman's not the like probably the most powerful card on the ban list in like the sense of pure power. Because I think that like Dark Depths
Oh
is probably
yeah.
more powerful. But like I also think that Death Ray Shaman just will warp the meta by itself. And I just don't think people are ready for that or willing to acknowledge that either. Of just like this 100% will warp the meta.
Look, I acknowledge Roman Reigns as my tribal chief. I don't acknowledge Deathrite Shaman as a format warping magic card. So give it to me, please. Ah
Jesus.
well. All right. That's all I got. Do you have anything else that you want to add, Randall?
I don't think so. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think modern can be in a good place if we stop doing these scheduled bannings. I think scheduled bannings are probably the worst thing Wizards wants to some for some reason have this hill to die on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they should just kind of go back to what they did a while ago, and it was like, hey, in a week we're gonna have an announcement. And I think everybody kind of knew what it was going to be, but I guess it wasn't necessarily guaranteed. And I think I like that better than every 3 to 6 months we're gonna revisit what's going on.
Yeah, because I think that we could have fixed this problem really early on, and we just chose not to. It's a naughty thing, I think, all over again. Where like we clearly knew there was a problem, we decided not to fix it for insert reasons.
Yeah, we're gonna wait.
Yeah,
Let's see if it's actually that bad. Oh my god, it's on fire.
yeah. So I know no one from Wizards watches this podcast, but like,
Not yet.
please God, just stop the scheduled bannings. Just go back to where we ban things as we should. We see a problem, we fix a problem. We don't just let it fester until the doctor's like, "Yeah, man, you're gonna have to get it amputated."
Oh
That
yeah.
would be cool. If we could just stop doing that, we're running out of body parts.
Mm. Well, if that's all you have to add, you degenerate.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, then I want to take this time to thank you all. If you made it to the end of the episode, we do greatly appreciate the support. Whether you're watching, of course, liking, subscribing to the channel, all that fun stuff, it all goes a very long way into supporting the podcast. So we do want to thank you for all that. Of course, again, leave your opinions, suggestions, maybe what you thought about our kind of thoughts and opinions of the ban restriction announcement in the comments down below. We'd love to hear it and probably read off some of those predictions coming to the reaction episode, I suppose, for the announcement. And if you want more content, go ahead and check out my channel as well as Randy's channel. Both are linked in the description down below. Again, all the support goes a very, very, very long way, and we are greatly appreciative of it. And with all that said, we'll go ahead, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we are very happy campers on March 31st. See
Yes.
ya.
So yeah.